Venice flooding is getting worse, and the city's grand plan won't save it. Conversation reports. This is authors Carl Amos and George Umgesser from Oceanographic Center, University of Southampton, and Oceanography Institute of Marine Sciences. The spectacular centerpiece of Venice, St. Mark's Square, now floods more than 60 times every year, up from 4 times in the year 1900. Recent storms reportedly helped cover over 70% of the city in water, which rose up by about a yard and a half, 156 centimeters above its normal level. Upcoming research conducted with our colleagues in the National Research Center for Venice, CNR, shows that without intervention, within 50 years, this kind of flooding could occur with nearly every high tide. In fact, some experts have argued that Venice will be gone by the year 2100. The increase in flooding in Venice is due to the combined effects of land subsidence causing the city to sink and climate change causing the global sea level to rise. But the city's chosen solution to the problem, an unfinished scheme of 78 storm gates known as MOEs, is likely to cause damage to the ecological health of the surrounding lagoon and in the long run could have no effect on Venice's preservation. Venetians have been managing Venice Lagoon with engineering since the 12th century. The city is built on 118 small islands drained by a network of canals and located within a tidal lagoon sat between the Italian coast and several barrier islands known as the Murazzi. Interventions have included diverting 6 major rivers away from the lagoon to stop its waterways filling with silt, rebuilding and extending the Murazzi, and reducing the inlets between them from the original 9 to 3. Venetians have also combated flooding by periodically raising pavements and walkways and building embankments, but this is no longer possible without damaging the city's architecture. So in 2003, the MOEs project was launched as a way of protecting Venice from the worsening floods. But the Venetian scientific community is divided over the impact of the project on the lagoon given how much worse the flooding could be. Records held in the city show the Venice sea level has consistently risen by a total of 26 centimeters since 1870. Around 12 centimeters of that comes from the fact that Venice's islands are subsiding because of the amount of water removed from the aquifer beneath Venice Lagoon. Further measurements show that the sea level is still rising 2.4 millimeters a year. As a result, with a sea level rise of 50 centimeters, the MOEs storm gates will need to close almost daily in order to protect the city from flooding. The problem with this comes from the fact that some of Venice's untreated sewage flows directly into the lagoon via the canals and presently is flushed through the inlets into the sea within a week. Shutting the inlets every day could cause increased microbiological pollution and eutrophication of the lagoon. This is where the water becomes so full of nutrients that it spawns excessive growth of plants and algae at the expense of other wildlife. So the lagoon is at risk. This would follow other damage to the lagoon's ecosystem caused by the loss of salt marshes and tidal flats and the reclamation of tidal flats in other areas for fish farming. Meanwhile, seabed erosion from dredging and illegal clam harvesting has increased the central part of the lagoon's depth by 50 centimeters since 1970. There are major concerns among the scientific community of Venice that further enclosing and restricting the lagoon would further compromise its ecological health. The other problem with MOEs is that it does not address the issue of the rising sea level, which is already damaging the city's buildings with salt and damp, despite widespread renovation of foundations and canals. The conservator of St. Mark's Cathedral has shown that the seawater has risen several meters through the church's foundation walls. Several alternatives to the MOEs project have been proposed, including pumping water back into the ground to raise the city up, but none have received widespread acceptance by the scientific community. There's an agreement that the salt marshes and mud flats that once surrounded Venice should be returned to their former extent in order to prevent the ecological health of the lagoon. But this will certainly not solve the problem of rising sea levels. If the sea level rises above a substantial water level, there will be no other choice than to permanently cut off the lagoon from the Adriatic Sea. That's to the west of Italy. Clearly, this can only be done if the problems of pollution, sewage, and port activities have been resolved. In this case, we will have a fresh water lagoon, different from the one we know, but preserving the city of Venice within it. Kindly support my Patreon account, since that's the only way I can continue what you like seeing on this channel. Thank you. You'll find it in the description box below.